Hello, everyone, and welcome to my low-tech version of reading you a story. This is one of my favorites. It's called The Mirror by Lawrence W. Lee, published in 1989. Not far from here, there is a beautiful meadow where hundreds of flowers grow along the banks of a very small stream. It is a very peaceful place, especially in springtime, when all the air is warm and there are butterflies everywhere you look. But it wasn't always like that. Not too long ago, there were only 2 flowers there, hardly enough for butterflies to bother with at all. There was 1 flower on each side of the stream, and not much else, but dirt and rocks and a few little sticks lying about. Well, not much else except the foos and the moos, that is. Now, you may never have seen a moo, and it's almost certain that you have never seen a foo, because foos and moos are so very, very small. Why, 3 or 4 of them could dance a jig right on the palm of your hand. And you have to look very closely to tell foos and moos apart. In fact, it would be almost impossible were it not for the fact that they wear different kinds of hats. The foos wear hats with 2 points on top, and the moos wear hats with only 1 point. But both types of hats have a very wide brim to keep the sun off their faces. Otherwise, foos and moos look exactly the same, except, that is, for one particular foo who likes to call himself General Foo, Protector of all Fooland and the Foo Flower too. Most of the other foos find that a little difficult to say without getting all mixed up in the middle, so they just call him General Foo for short. I can remember especially well one beautiful summer morning in the land of the foos and the moos, when all sorts of trouble began. And, as was often the case, the trouble began with General Foo. Now, General Foo didn't do much in Fooland, except stand at the edge of the stream for hour after hour, looking across at the other side, where the moo people lived, with a long spyglass he had made just for that purpose. Every foo in Fooland knew that General Foo was a little different from the others, and at first it bothered them that he didn't help them gather the seeds from the Fooland flower. But after a while, they decided that he wasn't doing any harm looking through his spyglass all day. He also wasn't much good at gathering seeds anyway. Besides, if they ever did need protection from something, perhaps it was a pretty good idea to have a General Foo, protector of all Fooland and the Foo Flower too, just in case. Everything had gone along just fine until the morning General Foo came running up to the rest of the Fooland folks, all in a dither, and said, "Now listen here, ladies and gentle foos. We've got to do something to protect our flower. As you know, I've spent quite a bit of time watching those moos over there across the river." It was a river to them, you see, but it was so small. "And I don't like the looks of it. You never can trust a moo, you know, and I'll just bet anything they're making plans right now to steal our flower." "Oh dear," said all the foo folks. "How can this be? Why would the moos want our flower when they already have one of their own?" "You can't trust a moo," General Foo said again. "And after all, who knows more about moos than me?" Well, the other foo folks certainly couldn't argue with that. They had all been too busy gathering seeds to think about the moos. "Yes, that's true," they finally said. "But what in the world can we do?" Okay, manual error. Okay, here we go. Send them a message, said General Fu, feeling very important now that all the others were listening to him. Let them know we mean business and won't stand for any sneaky flower-snatching tricks. Then General Fu put a bottle from his pocket. Inside the bottle was a note. I just happened to have one prepared, he said, and proceeded to march off to the river. After he had thrown the bottle with the note inside to the river, he marched back to the other Fu folks. It may not seem important now, he said, but all of you will thank me later. So be good Fus and don't trust moos. Later that same afternoon, the bottle holding the note washed up on the bank on the moo side of the river and was found by a little moo who just happened by at the time. Naturally, he read the note. Then he went running back to the base of the moo flower and called a meeting of all the moos. When he had read the note to the rest of the group, everyone was very quiet. Finally, one little moo spoke. I don't know why the Fus are afraid of us, he said, because we have a flower of our own. It provides us with plenty of seeds, so we certainly don't need the seeds from the Fu flower, too. But what can we do? Said the other moos. We must let them know how silly it is for a Fu not to trust a moo. I have an idea, said one moo, who was particularly bright. It will take a lot of work, but it might be worth it, even if we have to work all night, which is just what they did. The next morning, General Fu was down by the river again, looking out across the water at Mooland. Soon he came running back to the other Fu folks, waving his arms in excitement. Just as I thought, he said, when the Fus had all gathered around. You can't trust a moo. There I was, just minding my own business, and watching out for our flower, mind you, when on the other side of the river I saw the ugliest moo you can imagine. And he was looking right back at me, sizing up the opposition, I'll bet. Well, we can sure show those moos a thing or two. Then General Fu held his arms behind his back. He liked to stand that way because he thought it made him look strong and important. He waited for a few seconds and then cleared his throat and said, in the most powerful voice he could manage, We must prepare. How? Cried all the other Fus, who were by now quite alarmed at the importance of the matter. Build a wall, cried General Fu. Build a wall so strong and tall that our flower will be safe forever. Yes, yes, cried all the Fu folks. And the wall was begun. They started by building a scaffold around the flower. It was kind of a wooden tower made of sticks, and it took almost a full day to erect. Some of the Fu people were worried. With all of them working on the wall, they wouldn't be able to collect flower seeds to eat, and they only had a few left. But General Fu reassured them, saying, I know that this must be terribly difficult for all of you to do, but you can't trust a moo, especially when they want to steal the Fu flower. Then he put his arms behind his back again and said, You'll thank me when we're through. The next morning, General Fu was back at the river. Through his spyglass he saw a flower with a wooden scaffold built around it, and some tiny figures moving around on it that could only be moos. And there was that same ugly moo looking back at him. General Fu turned red with rage. "The very idea," said General Fu, when he had run back to the other Fus. "To think that the moos don't trust us. They're building a wall around their flower, too. This is an act of war. But their wall can't be nearly so strong or tall as ours. Moos can't do anything right." So the Fu people kept building their wall. They cut great blocks of stone from the riverbank and dragged them into place. General Fu stood on one of the blocks all day, giving orders, and reminding all the other Fus not to trust moos. The next day, General Fu went back to the river. He snorted at what he saw and then marched back to the Fu flower. "You'll have to work even harder," he said. "Those ugly moos have been working all night on their wall. But we'll show them. One good Fu is better than any 2 moos." "But, General," said one of the Fus, "even one Fu won't be any good if he is so hungry that he can't think. And all our seeds are gone. There's nothing to eat." "Oh, well, yes," said the general. "That may be true, but we surely won't have any seeds if those murderous moos steal our Fu flower, too." Then, looking very grim, he said, "We'll just have to make do." And they did. But that didn't keep them from being very hungry. The next day, when the tired blocks of stone and the final one was lowered into place on their wall, seeds or no seeds, no one could get to their Fu flower now. No one at all. But the next day, the Fus had a visitor. It was a moo. He had come across the river on a boat built especially for the occasion. All the Fu people were so hungry that they could hardly think, even General Fu. But that didn't stop him from being mad. He was so mad that he almost turned purple this time. "What are you doing here, you murderous moo?" he yelled. "Have you come begging for peace?" Well, no," said the moo. "We thought you might be hungry, now that you can't get seeds from your flower. So I've brought you some of ours." "What?" screamed General Fu. "This must be a trick. You can't have any seeds. You built a wall too." With that, the little moo turned around and made a signal to his friends on the other side of the river. There was a distant crash and a tinkle as though something had broken. And then the moo said, "Now look through your spyglass and tell me what you see." Muttering to himself, the general pulled out his spyglass and looked across the river. Then he was quiet for a very long time. "But how can this be?" he finally said. "I see the moo flower and no wall at all." The little moo said, "We built no wall. You were looking at yourselves. We put up a mirror we had found in pieces by the river so that you could see what we saw." He paused for a moment. The Fus were very quiet. "I'm sure your flower is dead by now, because there is no sunlight behind your wall. So even if you could tear it down, you would have no seeds." He looked at the general, who could find nothing to say. And then at all the other Foos. "So please," he said, "won't you accept these?" He opened a pouch that hung by his side and gave them a bag full of seeds, enough to last the Foos for quite a while. "They're not poisoned?" asked the general in a rather weak voice. "How can we Foos trust people like Moos? You're not the same as us. Your hats only have one point on top, and you live on the other side of the river." "That is true," said the Moo. "Our hats only have one point, and we do live on the other side of the river. But we are the same inside, and trust comes from within. We all have it, both Moos and Foos. Just open your eyes, and you'll see that trust can make friends the best that can be." And it did. Now, if you go walking some fine spring day and happen to come upon a beautiful meadow with hundreds and hundreds of flowers and a stream, you'll know that the flowers are there because of friendship and trust between some very tiny people. And you may wonder that if the result of that trust could be so beautiful, what the world would be like if all people trusted each other enough to be friends. It would be beautiful, my friend. Simply beautiful. The end. I hope you enjoyed. And remember, this is a fictional book. Any representation that reminds you of real-life people is purely by accident, and this was published in 1989. Enjoy.